Welcome back to the Spiritual Awakening Podcast with Shaz. I'm your host, Shaz Sini. Today I'm joined by the beautiful Meg Calvin. Meg is an amazing best-selling author and writing and marketing coach who helps writers do the deep spiritual work to create and sell their own best-selling novels on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. She is there for you every step of the journey. She helps you market the book, publish the book, and support you through your writing journey and is available for help at any time. She's also a beautiful spiritual woman who has her own story to tell. And today we're going to take a deep dive into her personal history and share her spiritual awakening journey. Thank you, Meg, for joining me.
Oh, I'm so honored to be here. I've loved your show and I love your wisdom and your vulnerability. And this is an honor to help your listeners write their helpful and transformational books.
I love that about you. And your book is called I Am My Own Sanctuary. Now, as a spiritual person, that's what I totally believe. You need to be your own sanctuary. One of my big lessons in life and a great awakening aspect for me was listening to a beautiful woman called Lisa Nichols, and her message was, You are your own rescue. And I feel that's a very similar comparison to it, and it
Yeah.
shifted something magically within me. And I even today talking about it, I get full body tingles from it because I know the impact that it had on my life. And it looks like you've just been joined by someone fabulous with us. So is that your dog
It's a
coming to say
dog.
hello?
Yep.
I love
He
that. They
always,
always know
he
what we
always,
do,
yep. They
and
always
sometimes
do.
we
Yep.
need that. So yeah, and how beautiful is that? I'd love you to share your story with us about your own spiritual journey and how you became an author and what do you do now. So we'll start back at the beginning. Spirituality has always been part of my life. I was brought up with it in the background, but it really didn't take hold for me personally until I was in my mid 20s. How did it show up in your life?
Yes, like many people, and I think similar to your journey in this incarnation, there was big T and little t trauma in the early childhood part of my life. And so by the time I was 6, I was very afraid and very sad and just reaching the point of adrenaline and cortisol overload. So I was just starting to go numb. And my mom had a secretary at the time who sang in a gospel choir, an all black gospel choir. And
Wow.
that secretary invited me, yeah, to come sing with her choir. And so here I was, little white girl. My mom braided my hair, 2 brown braids, and I was singing in this choir. And it was in that moment of swaying with the music and harmonizing and breathing that I felt the palpable presence of a very loving, healing God, and a God that knows all, that made me, that loves me, and that everything was going to be okay. And I can still see the dust floating in the rays of sun coming from the stained glass to my right. It was a very powerful moment. And from that moment, while it was very healing, I became addicted to church because I felt loved there. I felt seen there. And in that season of my family's life, I wasn't getting the affirmation and validation that I needed at home. So church met that need. Well, fast forward when I'm 13, I started preaching. Now I know I was channeling. My missionary grandparents would take me around to churches and conferences and missionary trips, and I was this ecclesial show pony. I would preach and I would sing. And fast forward, by age 17, I was on a church payroll, and I went to seminary and was a minister and a ministerial intern through college, but was officially on a church payroll from age 17 to 32. And spent a lot of time, the majority of the time, hustling and grinding and being in the divine masculine, just subconsciously striving for someone to tell me I was fucking good enough. And I wasn't working from pleasure or, the divine
Yeah.
feminine at all. So when I was 28, my wake up call started at a somatic Enneagram retreat. And I'm going to pause.
Beautiful. I love that. Like, one, even as a child, wasn't baptized as a child, and I searched for religion in different places to go through. And it's something that inspires us to this spiritual journey. I do believe that we all believe in the same thing. We just have different perspective, understanding, and the language is different.
Mhm.
Tell us a bit
Yeah.
more about that journey. How did God show up in your life? How did spirit talk to you? And you mentioned that
Mhm.
you were channeling and preaching. I do believe they are the same thing.
Yeah.
What were some of the great messages that you had at that time?
Oh, I remember my first sermon, which is um pretty weak now looking back, almost being 40, but in that moment it was what it was. Exegetically weak, I should say. But it was over Proverbs 17:22, a cheerful heart is good medicine. And I spoke, the take home nugget was the more that we make an effort to look for the things to be thankful for, the more we realize we have a lot to be thankful for, and the more thankful we'll be. And I ended the sermon by singing a Bing Crosby song from White Christmas. When I'm worried and I can't sleep, I count my blessings and I fall asleep. So that was my first sermon that I did, and I was so thankful for, looking back now, so thankful for all the male and female mentors that were pushing me, and the Protestant world gave me a safe space to practice using my intuitive abilities, even though they had totally different labels on them. But
Yeah.
I'm so thankful for that, and thankful that when it was time to leave ministry, that I was thankful for it and ready to evolve to what my soul planned to do next.
Beautiful. I love that. And that's what it is for me. We are all talking literally the same language. It's just different words
Mhm.
and slight different interpretations on it. But when you weigh it up and you look at the way that it evolves in each other's lives, it is the same thing. It's the same core message. I had a beautiful
Mhm.
friend and she's passed over now, but she was a Jehovah's Witness. And we used to have the best debates on reincarnation, resurrection. Same thing, different plane of existence, on the afterlife, on the eternal existence of the soul, on what it meant to be spiritual, on how she'd lost a brother in childhood and how I believed that we could communicate with him and how she wasn't quite sure, but would accept my version and her version. And we used to talk about it for hours and hours and have the best fun when at core, at the end of the day, when you broke it down on a logical mindset, right? When you took away
Mhm.
your core beliefs and what you're being programmed or preached about, when you went back to core, they were the exact same message, the exact same existence. After she did pass away, I had a beautiful lady bring her through in spirit and pass on a
Oh, wow.
message because that was our thing. We set up ourselves that whoever crossed first was to come back and show the other the right way. And her message was, "You're right, but I'm right. Is the same thing." What they consider the resurrection, or the 3 days after death in the Bible of the resurrection of Christ, is that is the passing of soul to spirit. Sometimes it's very instantaneous, but there is that 3 day break. And that's where I believe we go through and do the soul review and review our life and go back through what did we achieve? What did we fail at? What are we holding ourselves accountable karmically and judgmentally, and how God source loves us and how we rise again into the spirit form. And
Mhm.
that's the story that she told me of it. It's beautiful. And so many things in the Bible are very spiritual. You mentioned being thankful. We call it gratitude. It's exactly the same
Mhm.
word, different language. But
Yes.
if you talk about manifestation and gratitude with people that are quite religious, they'll quote the Bible quote that you have. And I can't quote from the Bible in that way. I've read it in many different avenues, but I don't have them at hand.
Mhm.
But as someone that practices it, you would have many different quotes or mantras that you live by. Do you have a favorite one right now that's working for you?
Mm. It's been so interesting since I started my metaphysical journey in 2019. Um, I have not been in the Bible. I've been enjoying other sacred texts. I've spent a lot of time in anything about the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and
Yep.
restoring the divine feminine. I've spent a lot of time with Megan Watterson's Divine Feminine Oracle deck and journaling around that. I've Michael Singer. I spent a lot of time in tarot classes. So other
Beautiful.
sacred texts have
Yep.
replaced my Bible routine. But my favorite Bible verse is Psalms 139, and it's a really beautiful Mercy Me song, who's an American Christian contemporary band. But they have a beautiful song, this psalm put to music, but the psalm speaks of before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. But the part that has the words that have the biggest energy pocket for me, watch me not remember them in this pivotal moment that you're asking for it.
That's okay.
The part I remember is where can I go from your spirit if I stray to the wings of dawn, or if I head to the farthest side of the sea, even there your hands will hold me fast. Even there your hands will guide me. Something like that has always sizzled
Yep.
for me.
And I love that because one of the next podcast episodes that I'm going to talk about is how we choose our parents and how are aware of each other before we are in the womb, and how our souls have interacted on that spiritual plane before we contract to come together. So
Oh
from
yeah.
that religious background and in the ministry, there was a shift, right? Did you go through what spiritually we term the dark night of the soul? Did you have that pure awakening moment, or was it something over time?
There was definitely a moment, and it had to do with past lives.
Yep.
And so to no surprise, of course, you brought that up, being the intuitive badass that you are. Yes,
And
the past lives.
I love that. And sometimes they just know, right? So, what was that pivotal
Yes.
moment?
Yep. So I had already felt an inner knowing before I knew about the word claircognizance.
Yep.
I had a moment of inner knowing before I even started deep classes on all things metaphysical. And the inner knowing told me that I would not retire at this church like I thought I would, that it was time for something new. And I wasn't sure what that was exactly, but I agreed to it. My soul was
Yep.
open to it. And I even told a friend, she said, "You gonna retire here?" And I said, "Nope, something's coming. I don't know what it is." So that was in the spring. And the next fall, I Am My Own Sanctuary, that book, the publisher reached out to me and said, this is the last week to change anything in the book before it goes to print. And like most authors, I knew exactly what I had to change, but it was going to be scary because I was going to talk about purity culture I was raised in Texas in the Bible Belt, and purity culture it's really my experience of it. I had scars around sensuality and sexuality, tons of shame,
Yep.
and I wanted to tell the whole truth about that, and in a satirical but a kind of a whistleblowing kind of way, and speak about my own experience with sex. And if I was to do that, I knew I was going to lose respect of some mentors in my life, a lot of mentors, and I was scared to death to do that. So that week, I used to host a show called the Listening Chair podcast with my friend Miranda, and we had on a guest, and he called himself the modern day mystic from Emory University in Georgia. And he said, "Listen to your dreams. Your ancestors speak in your dreams." And I thought, well, that's cool. But at that point, I hadn't studied dream interpretation yet, but there was a part of me that just felt this is for me.
Yep.
Well, then the next day, I listened to a podcast, and I met the woman who would train me in my intuitive abilities, the Reverend Dr. Katie Valentine. That was the first time I heard her. And she said on this episode, "Listen to your dreams. Your ancestors and your past lives guide you in your dreams." And I thought, holy crap, there's something here for me. And at that point, I didn't believe in past lives. And at the same time, I did. As a minister, I had this knowing of, I've been here before. I was definitely in New York in the 70s, but at the same time, it's sinful. So I don't believe that. Um, and I had known about Dr. Ian Stevens' work in University of Virginia, with studying birthmarks in children and how birthmarks show how we crossed over. Your listeners know all this. And I knew that my daughter, who was 4 at the time, and I had almost an identical birthmark on our left leg by our knee, and it looks like a burn mark based on Stephen's
Mhm.
work. So I knew all of that. I also knew that my ancestors were maternal and paternal, all go back to Scotland. And as my grandmother was lovingly grooming me to go to seminary, she showed me this family tree history where we had ancestors, the McNain couples, after they procreated, they were burned at the stake
Yep.
for writing Protestant books by Catholics. So I knew all of this. I go to bed that night. I don't think nothing comes in my dreams. But my 4-year-old, she comes down the hall the next morning and she wasn't afraid. It wasn't like she had red dye before bed and she had a scary dream. She wasn't afraid, and she said, rubbed her cute little brown eyes, and she said, "Mom, I had the weirdest dream." And my ears perked up. I said, "Oh, tell me more." It was you and me, and we were up high, and people had sticks of fire, and they poked my leg and they poked your leg. And just like I am now, I am
Your
covered in
body. Yep.
chills.
Yep.
And I thought, this is for me. And so I called my friend who hosted the podcast with Katie, Jamal, who was further along on his metaphysical journey. And I said, Jamal, I told him the whole situation, and I said, Jamal, what do I do now? And then without missing a beat, he said, Meg, you're not going to be burned this time. Change the book. And so, and I told him, I feel like I've awakened to a different dimension. And he said, oh, you have. And I said, what do I do now? And he said, speak the words. I'm open for whatever you have for me. And then I went all in on changing the book, outgrowing relationships, and hiring Katie to coach me in everything metaphysical.
I love that. That's so amazing. And it's exactly how it can happen. And it is one of my
Mm-hmm.
beliefs that birthmarks are remnants from our past lives. And I've had experiences with that with clients and with my own experiences. I have talked about it on one of the episodes. It's another deep dive that I want to go into because the past lives for me were really something that fascinated me through the books and works of Edgar Casey. And he opened my eyes to a lot of things. But there was another book that I read, and it was about reincarnation. It's a very small novel, and it's called Karma and Reincarnation. And it talked about like little kids coming back and remembering their past lives. One child come back and told people where he was murdered, and he led them to the body. And that just opened up doorways. There was another book that I love, and I've had it for many years, by an author called Dawn Rawlings and Angels. And in her book, she talked about this lady, and she was haunted and went through this life with the same person basically murdering her. And she warned her that the energy was still around. Her life in the book, at one stage, she was a dolphin, and the person that murdered her was a shark, and that was the past life memory that they did. And then, unfortunately, weeks or months later, it wasn't very long after they'd met, she was murdered again by the same person. So, our
Oh
karmic
my
links
gosh.
to people and the stories that we play out and the roles that we have can interplay, and we can create literally the same style of death. We can create the same lessons in this life. It's about how we grow and evolve through them.
Mm-hmm.
So all of
Yeah,
this
so
fascinates
true.
me, and I love like different people's versions of it, and I can't wait to talk to so many more people about their experiences because you never know what can come up. And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
why spirituality is so fascinating to me, and even the religious parts. I've spoken to another lady that had a Muslim background and Islam, and her story and fascination with that and how she used that to move into a spiritual realm and healing. This is where I truly believe we all talk about the same thing. We all believe in the
Mhm.
same essence. It's just different perspective, different life lessons, and different experiences throughout it. Are there any other
Mhm.
experiences that
Yeah.
have really had a massive impact on your life?
I was just going to share something that you just said, reminded me of the truth that believing in reincarnation as a former Christian minister doesn't change anything about God's nature. It doesn't even get rid of the doctrine of sin. We call it something different. We call it being out of alignment or
Yeah.
quantum leaping timelines, but it doesn't. It tells us it gives us the gift of a God who is so loving that there's multiple opportunities to experience grace, to experience forgiveness, to experience alignment, and so that was so healing for me. And other
So, besides your daughter's dream, what other dreams or impactful events have you had? Any other soul? Like, I've had many soul incarnations where I know I've lived other lives with people. Have you had that
yes,
experience too?
yeah. So as my business has grown the past 5 years, I was running into a block of monetizing my gifts and my services, because there's a team of 6 of us now on my team, and there's a narrative of limiting belief running, still being a minister, and that poverty is piety, poverty is yeah. So that was coming up, and at the same time, I met a woman just moved to town that was qualified in Dolores Cannon's quantum healing hypnotherapy. And so I had a session with her, and it was extremely healing. And the Cliff Notes version, the wounds I've gotten to heal in this incarnation is one of the wounds is I've done everything my mother wanted me to do. My mother made all my choices, all the choices. And so, of course, for children, that for me, speak for myself, Meg, for me, that gave me the story that my desires are not safe to trust. Because if my desires were safe to trust, my mom would trust me in making them.
Yep.
So this has been well into my 30s, healing this. And so this past life regression, I came into the, do you want me to share the cliff notes of the regression? Okay.
Absolutely. Whatever you're willing to share.
Okay, awesome. What this regression showed me was it was unbelievable. So I'll just tell you how I experienced it.
Yeah.
Instead of giving you the summary. I didn't want to get off the cloud when she was taking me back. Yep. And she was an amazing facilitator. And then I walked in the house, and it was a farmhouse. It was in the Midwest. And there was a mirror, but I didn't want to look at it. And so I'm sharing this. And then she asked me to look down, and was I male or female? And I looked down and I saw male loafers. And I had this inner knowing that I was definitely male. Mm-hmm. And that I had done something shameful. And then it took me to another scene. And it was in the 40s or 50s, Midwest America. And I'm looking, and it's a church, and I'm parked in a car, and I'm seeing my wife and my daughter leave this church, but they're leaving me. And then she told me, she had me record it. So I listened back to it, and my voice changed. It was so low and monotone. And she said, your whole face contorted. You weren't even you anymore. And I started to sob, and I said, she's leaving me. She's leaving me. And it was this weird feeling. Never mind. You know what it is. You know how it feels of being conscious, but also a part of you taking over.
Yeah.
So then I came back. The voom took me to another scene, and I was back at the house, and there were people around my kitchen table, yellow curtains, white metal cabinets. They weren't doing a seance. They were gambling. There was something dark happening. And then I zoomed out to the forest to the right of my house. I've never shared this on a podcast. This is pretty exciting to share this. I zoomed out to the forest to the left side of my house, and there were it was all there was all masculine energy. There were no women or anyone that identified as a woman present. They were all black hoods, and they were burning something green. And she asked, do they see you, or are you just observing? And I said, in this moment, they do not notice me. I'm observing. And then I zoomed out back to the car parked in front of the church where my wife and daughter left me. And there was a suitcase in the back trunk of my white car, and the suitcase was empty. And then I felt the boss coming, and he was mad, and I started to cry and cry and cry. And he took me down to this elevator in a empty warehouse with bricks, and I started to cry and cry and cry. And she said, is this where you die? And I said, this is where I die. And I was put in a chair, and a guy had a giant stick or bat, and I was beaten to death. And in that moment, she said, you could zoom out, that it's no longer present with you. So then she took me out of the memory, and we started going to the higher self to ask the questions that I had prepared. And she said she's never experienced this before with a client. I don't know if that's bad or what, but I went back. I didn't want to leave the memory. And I went back to the boardwalk on my honeymoon with this woman. And this is not going to sound weird to your listeners, but I noticed some people out there, it would be weird to say what I'm about to say. My wife was my mom, and my mom in this life.
Yep.
And we're
Yep.
on this Ferris wheel. We're so happy. We're so happy. And then we were in bed. It was a pale green room with white wrought iron bed frame. And I'm holding her. And I just mourned her leaving me. And so then the facilitator, she asked me, I'm going to land the plane soon. She asked me, why did she leave you? And I said, she told me not to take this job, that it was something didn't feel right about it. And then I did, and I lost everything. So long story, very long, it made perfect sense in that moment that of course my mom and I would reincarnate together in this life, and I would do fucking everything she
Everything that
told
she
me
wanted.
to.
I love that.
Yes. And then the lesson of I can trust myself with money with an abundance, because I lost, I don't know what it was, mafia stuff. I don't know what it was, but I lost a lot of money, so much that I was beaten to death. And I could trust myself to charge what my team and I are worth. And because money is energy, and whatever I put money toward is going to just increase high vibes in the world. So it was a very, very, very powerful, and it deepened my love for my mom now.
I love that because I I had different past life experience, but same sort of thing with my brother. I couldn't understand why our relationship was why it was. So I had to go back on the healing journey to find out a lifetime with him to work out why the contract that we have in this life is the way that it is, and how it was impacted from the past life and what I could do to heal it. And he
Mhm.
suffered greatly for me in that life by protecting me and shielding me and keeping me away from real danger and harm. And therefore, his animosity in this life made sense. And I was able to cut the cords
Mhm.
to that, heal that. I get full body tingles when I think about it, and repair our relationship because of that awareness. He doesn't have any awareness. He doesn't need to. Your mum may or may not have awareness of it, but your understanding of it can change the whole reality of your interaction and take back your power to shift through the limiting beliefs that you
Mhm.
don't know that you carried from that past life, the shame that you bring
Yeah.
forward that you don't know you carried from that past life. As a healer, one of the things I do know is we try to heal things that we're aware of consciously from this life, and it's not always the case. We are here to do
Mhm.
generational healing, past life healing, metaphysical, multidimensional healing on different aspects for ourselves and our family members, depending on the light journey that we feel we've taken on. So,
Mhm.
having people understand that, I love that for you, and it's
Mhm.
beautiful. You talked about you and your team. Can you explain to us exactly what do you do? So,
Yeah.
I'm writing a book and I want some help. What would you do if I came to you?
Yes. So I have about 17 different packages, because along the past 5 years, every author's come and said, hey, could you do this? And we're like, yes, I can do that. And after working with traditional publishing companies for my first two books, when I first started my company, it was the business was, I'll help you write your memoir or work of nonfiction, and then I'll help you become a marketing genius and building your brand, and then I'll help you submit queries to companies, traditional companies. But my heart was so broken by how few royalties authors were getting, about
Mm.
6 to 10%,
Yeah.
how few rights they had with companies. And then that this is might surprise people to know, but there's a high amount of censorship in traditional publishing companies. I had a client who her she couldn't, they wanted her to take out the chapter that she told a story where she was raped,
Yep.
because they didn't want that in
Didn't
there.
want it.
And
Hmm.
then another part of her book, she went on to teach at the family planning center. She taught sex education. So there were pieces of her book that use words like penis and pussy and labia, and they told her you can't use
Can't
those.
do
And
that.
so the amount of censorship broke my heart. And so 3 years ago, one of the companies I was sending writers to, they sold their company, and I've been so fortunate to have the same business coach since 2018. And my business coach said, what if this is divine fuckery? and you're being pushed out of the nest and it's going to be good. I was like, oh crap, you're right. So at that point, I knew enough about what I knew about the game and I knew what I didn't know. And so I brought on a team of people that take care of the cover art and all the copy line editing, the book design, fonts, audible recording and editing, everything. So it frees me up to show up in my genius, which is I guess the technical term is developmental structural editing. So if I have authors that come with a finished book and some that come with an idea on a napkin. And my role, what I love so much is intuitively connecting with the author and intuitively connecting with the book and pulling it out of them, creating a template. I'm not a ghostwriter. I believe the book chose the person that's on the Zoom with me. And I'm going to help them find their style and get it out. And then my zone of genius is the marketing and brand building. And then my favorite part is the deep spiritual part, because great books are never not written. Double negative. So sorry. Let me try that again. Great books are never prevented from being released because the person lacked the talent or lacked a good idea. It's always because there's a block happening, and there's 4 types of common blocks I see all the time. And so I love helping people get unblocked, because I believe that I attract with my messaging and my prayers. I'm attracting the most influential light workers, if you will. And I love helping them shine their light brighter.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And it reminds me of a book that I read, Big Magic with Elizabeth Gilbert. And she talked about a interaction that she had with a lady who had an idea for a book and it went away and then it came back. And Elizabeth sort of had the same idea. And the ideas will come when big ideas need to get out in the world. And I believe this at a core, right? When God or universe, whoever you want to call the divine creator, has an idea, whether it's an invention, a story, a song lyric, or whatever it may be, that idea will go to someone. And if they don't act on it, if they don't follow through and they don't produce what the universe wants the divine to produce, they will then find somebody else to piggyback the same thing. That's why we have like 2 people have same ideas. That's why we had Tesla and Edison have same idea for electricity. Came about in different ways, different perspectives on it, totally different, but similar results. That's why many inventions happen very simultaneously, because someone needs to act, and it's about who takes that aligned action and who steps up to become what they need to become, and others because these ideas have to be manifested into this 3D reality. And in that story, it just showed me that, like, I have a deep affinity with Gabby Bernstein and I love her books and things like that. But what she's written are things that I've sort of known about, but I wasn't able to write about. I wasn't in a space to be able to do it. So I feel very aligned with that. And I know these inputs and insights come to those that can stand up and be noticed and have the greater impact of what's needed. So trust when things come to you and other people have similar ideas, your perspective and your version of it will be probably similar. A lot of people don't go through with their ideas or their inventions and stuff like that because, oh, there's something similar out there. Okay. There's 500 million things of the same thing. Like, how many loaves of bread are there? There is no limit on the same type of thing that you can put out there, because your version may just be the one that makes the difference. And that's what I like to empower. To see you empower people to write their books and tell their stories opens my heart so beautifully, to know that there are other people that feel and connect to this same line of thinking. I love that. So tell me, you become this coach. How does that fit in with your soul, passion, and purpose? What is the core spiritual insight for you that comes from your business, and how did you get led here?
I've been, as we talked about before we went on air, writing scripts since I was a little kid. And so always called to it. And when I was 28, the same grandmother that groomed me to be a pastor, who I love, and she crossed over a year ago this past October. And we went to this somatic Enneagram retreat. And and I'm an Enneagram 3 with a 2 wing for those that care. And on this retreat, I was asked the question, and let it be known by this point, I had been hustling and grinding in divine masculine energy in the church since I was 17. So now I'm 28. And the facilitator, she was beautiful inside and out. And she said to me, she was glowing, I should say. There was this glow about her that I now know what that was. And she said to me, Meg, what is one thing that you would do if no one, you could do it all day and no one was around to applaud you for it, but you would still feel pleasure? What is that? What is that thing for you? And I knew it in that moment. It was writing. And so I that began the journey of writing my first book. And then what took me to coaching was like lots of the business owners I work with that want their book to be a lead magnet, my book, my first book, opened the door for speaking gigs. And so I was invited to conferences. And what one conference I went to, they wanted some of the speakers to also offer coaching sessions on compassion fatigue. And I thought, oh, I could do that. And so the stars aligned and I was asked to start coaching, and I loved it. I'm a Cancer sun, moon, Pisces, rising Taurus. So I just love holding comforting emotional space, like hearing people's stories and comforting them. And also on human design, I'm a 1-3. So my third line rebel likes to rock the boat and disrupt thought patterns. And sometimes powerful people that I partner with, they need to have their world rocked with the truth sometimes. But I love the one-on-one partnership so much. So after the first book got picked up, people would come up to me and they would whisper with shame that they had a book idea too. But then they would share their limiting beliefs from their religious indoctrinations, that it was greedy to monetize and it was slimy and egotistical to market, that their desires weren't safe to trust, to the desires that wanted to receive the pleasure of writing. And that just broke my heart, because these were, I love Saturday Night Live so much. It's been which I think is another part of my past life in New York in the 70s. Since a kid, I've been obsessed with Monty Python and SNL, two comedy troupes that were birthed in 75. That's for a different time. Anyway, SNL 50th, they had a documentary and it showed Kanye in the music documentary. Kanye West 2016, so before he is who he is now. Hope he finds healing. But there's a teachable moment in this. Um, between dress rehearsal and a live show, Lauren Michaels, the big dog, he asked them to change his set because it was in the way of some camera equipment. So Kanye comes back after dress rehearsal. He's on live television. He sees the set is changed. He drops his microphone and he says, pardon my French, he says, what the fuck are they thinking? Did they not know who I am? I am 50% more influential than every single human. Don't fuck with me. And what I remember thinking was, holy crap, if the light workers, if the compassionate people of integrity that are writing healing books, if they just had a smidgen of Kanye's confidence, think about how much healing would happen in the world. So I think that's definitely my calling, is it's tied. The pleasure I feel in writing, but also the pleasure I feel in helping people, helping leaders remember their power and the deep work they're called here to do. So that I think that's all aligned there.
It is one
Yeah.
of my big wishes that people that do quality work and the light work had that level of confidence that some
Mhm.
celebrities have. Many would call it arrogance, but it's just knowing who you are. And that's
Yeah.
my big thing of helping people discover, who are you? We all have a purpose, we all
Mhm.
have a mission, we all have a reason for being here. And
Yeah.
it shapes and it alters. What you start off with is usually not what you become. Thankfully,
Mhm.
some of us discover our purpose and passion as children and we stick with it because we're not
Yeah.
discouraged, we are encouraged to stay with it. I encourage parents out there, when your child tells you they know what they want to be at 3, 4, and 5 years old, encourage the life out of that, right? Because they can do it.
Mhm.
They'll always come back to it eventually. Maybe not in the big picture that they have at 3, because the confidence of a 3-year-old is unshakable, right? Have you ever seen a
Yeah.
3-year-old dress in them and what they want and they walk outside strutting? Who cares? Like, we want to keep that confidence forever. And that's what I want to build in people too. And
Yes.
as a mentor and coach to authors, that would be something you would have to instill in them. the confidence to understand the message, to understand the core reason for the book. These ideas come to you because they are meant to manifest in the physical 3D plane. They're not meant to stay in our mind. They haunt us until we put them on paper or share them publicly, or create them into the material item that it's meant to be. And yeah, I love that you are supporting people doing that. With that in mind, tell us a bit about your own book. What is the core message behind that, and why was that so important to you as you shifted through it?
Yes, I like to describe I Am My Own Sanctuary as the book baby that the comedian Seth Meyers conceived with a nun. So what I mean by that is
That's
it's
gold.
very it is self-deprecating and dry, and it's also very theological and spiritual. And it's for recovering people pleasers that are ready to take their power back from others.
I love that. I'm really excited. I'm going to go and get a copy and read it for myself, actually. I I value your input, Meg. Tell us, in this present moment, exactly where you are on your spiritual journey, what is so important, and why were you called to come and share this message with us?
Yes. Yes. Where am I on my spiritual journey? Yes. You mentioned that tension that we struggle with as light workers, that is, I want to be confident, but I don't want to be arrogant. And so I think this answers the question. I'm like going through the checklist in my mind of, okay, where am I spiritually? I know I'm aware of what intuitive gifts I have the strongest, and I'm aware of my spirit team and how they talk to me, and I have ancestors who've crossed over, and I've had mediumship like moments with them, and so I have forgiven those who've caused me harm in this incarnation, whether it be physical harm or emotional harm, and see the divine lesson in that pain. And so I think this is a spiritual lesson. It's a current area of growth for me as a coach. And that is, I am my business coach today introduced me to the Hindu goddess Kali,
Mm-hmm.
who I'm new to her. And I'm really good. I'm really strong at being in the divine masculine. So I can be the riverbank of structure for the writers I serve, and they can show up in their ooey gooey, creative, divine feminine, creative energy. And I'll just hold the riverbanks for them. And I'm also good at I'm grappling with, is the divine mother energy different than Kali energy? And it seems like it is. So because I'm also I'm very, very nurturing. It's that the Kali energy, though, the pictures of art my coach sent me to meditate on, she has a belt of arms, bloody arms, and a necklace of heads. And my homework for my own coach is to research the symbolism of that. But she's very chaotic and she's vicious. And so there are there are moments that after 5 years in the coaching game, that I I will feel a very thought pattern disrupting question that will serve my client to ask. However, there's still a splintered part of myself that from my childhood, in my mom's emotional safety was on me. And if she was emotionally uncomfortable, I was not safe. And so after I've done all this healing and have come so far, I still struggle with, okay, I'm about to make this client very uncomfortable with this question. I'm about to call him or her out on their shit. Um, it's for their growth. I'm coming at it from a place of integrity and kindness, but can I self-source my own safety if my client is mad at me? And so I've taken baby steps there. and I think other past clients would speak to that. But in this exact moment, preparing for a client call tomorrow, where I get to deliver what this client has asked me for, and that is she wants transformation. She wants more confidence. I have a hard question to ask her, and I have to call in my team to help me tap into that. And I'm excited to research Collie and see what she can teach me. Am I saying her name right, Collie? Or
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Carly.
okay, cool,
She's
yeah.
it. I know a little bit about her. It's not something I've delved deep into, but I'm gonna go do some research on her as well, find out what's going on there. Because I love that people introduce me to new things. And you mentioned before Mary
Same.
Magdalene. I love her
Mm,
energy, and she is helping rise the divine feminine and help us find
yeah.
that confidence, stand up, be noticed, and really step into the power that we hold within. And that is
Hmm.
amazing work, and I thank you for that because it's so
Yeah.
needed. One of the things that I was talking to a client about yesterday is she had so much self-doubt and lack of self-worth. She's only the same age as me. I turned 52 this year, and she's 52 telling me that, "Oh, I can't do anything new. I'm too old." Really? Like, no. Like, life is just
No.
beginning. Her children are grown
Hmm.
up. She's free. She's at this whole new threshold of having the availability to go out and be anything she wants to be. She has a beautiful creative energy within her, and some writing is going to come up for her in a different way, but I'm going to encourage that and help her step into that power. But it
Hmm.
disheartens me to hear anyone, and women especially, turn around and say, "Oh, no, I'm too old for that." Okay.
Yeah.
We're never too old. The only time we're too old is when we're dead. It's the only time we can't do
Yeah.
anything, right? Life is
I
for
love that.
living. Live. Okay. I don't care if you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 80. Live. We are
Hmm.
here to experience. We are here to grow. We are here to be. If we don't live, we start our death process. And the only time you can't
Hmm.
change or do anything is when we're dead. Don't sit and wait for death to come and catch up to you. Life's for
No.
living. You can start anything new. And it can be anything minor or something massive and major. The biggest heartwarming stories I've ever read on Facebook or in blogs and on Google and stuff like that are stories about like 80-year-old women going back to college to graduate,
So
70-year-old women
amazing.
starting a new business. Most of the famous people in our lives never really started anything until very late in life. Like, look at
Hmm.
KFC and Colonel Sanders. He started at 60 something years old. We're never too
Wow.
late. And if we lived
Hmm.
with that mindset that every day is the dawn of a new day, new beginnings comes to us all the time, and life is for living, imagine what the world would look like. It wouldn't be this monotonous robotic place that we live in, full of fear.
Hmm.
And that is one of the big things that I want to help change energetically and existentially around the world, is to remove that fear and know that everyone has a soul mission, a soul purpose, a reason for living, and lessons to learn. Live, go out
Hmm.
and do and be. You talked about how you discovered, someone asked you, what would you want to do? I ask people, what is something that you love that brings you joy? What is something you're good at that you don't have to think about that doing? Everyone goes, oh, they have all these talents, and they go, oh, that's nothing. When you're really good at something, you don't have to think about it and it comes really easy to you. Not everyone can do that. So many people think,
Hmm.
oh, everyone can do this. No, they can't. It's a gift and a talent, and they certainly can't do it
Yeah.
in the same way you can. Do what
Hmm.
brings you the greatest joy, and something that you would love to spend all your time doing, even if nobody ever read it, felt it, saw it, or did it. I love creating different things. One of my big things, and I've seen you holding your crystal, is crystal work. I talk to my crystals, I play with them. I seen a beautiful woman on an Instagram video just before our session today, and it was how she walked into a shop and how she goes to play all the different singing bowls. And I need to get someone to do that. I have a healing room in my house, and I do. I wake up and I go and play all the music. I activate the energy. I sit and pray and meditate with my crystals. I do all these different things, and that's what brings me joy. I could play with crystals for the rest of my life. I don't care what anyone notices. I don't even think to do the videos of it because it's for me. It's not for anybody else. I don't do it just for recognition. I do it because it brings me the greatest joy, the greatest acceptance of self and love. And I talk to the air. So, yeah, it's
So true.
beautiful.
Wow.
I really appreciate all of your compassion and all of your vibration today. So, working with Carly and the
Yeah.
energy that you are on your spiritual journey, what is your favorite mantra, affirmation, or go to phrase? What is the uplifting, inspirational thing that you put out there right now?
Mm. I remember doing a workshop about picking my mantra, and that the facilitator said it has to, she didn't use these words. I'm gonna paraphrase. They have to have an energy pocket. You have to really, oh, yes. And my mantra, it it might rub some people the wrong way, but as a recovering people pleaser, and
I
as
don't care.
someone who, what'd you say?
I don't care.
You don't care? Okay.
Ultimately,
That's
there are
awesome.
people that are going to love it, and there are people that are going to hate it.
Yeah.
And if they hate
Yeah.
it, you've just triggered something in them that they're hiding from. So,
Yes, oh, I love how you said that. Yes, that's so true. That's so true. As 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 someone who became a woman with lots of just constant guilt, constant shame from childhood stuff, and never feeling good enough, and always shrinking back and playing small, and always making my preferences invisible to keep others comfortable, the mantra that has served me the past 2 years, and it still sizzles for me, is, as I've been building my queendom that is serving the most influential light workers in the world, doing their own healing so their books can help others heal, my mantra is I get what I want. And knowing that I'm a person of integrity, I'm a person that has habits in place and a support system in place that is always keeping me in alignment, it's a good thing if I and my business get what I want, because what I want is more light workers having more confidence and writing more healing books. So that is my mantra that is written here in my office. And when I first wrote it on my giant year calendar here, I was afraid of company visiting.
yeah,
I thought, oh, all these stories came in. Oh, they're going to think I'm egotistical. They're going to think I'm a brat. And I just let those stories go.
I love it.
And yeah, so that's my, for 2 years now, that's been my mantra. And before that, I have it tattooed on my arm in the title of my book. It came to me 7 or 8 years before I wrote the book, and the quote came to me in Latin. I don't speak Latin, but I love to sing it. It came to me, ego sanctuario mio. And so for the longest time, my mantra was, I am my own sanctuary. And I was trying to live into that. But then as I up leveled, or I evolved to what I needed to be in these past 2 years, the mantra has shifted to, I get what I want. And it feels so good to say and live into.
I love it. One of my favorite one is everything you need is inside of you. Like, just go
Oh,
within.
wow.
Everything,
Yes. Go
everything
within.
that you ever need is inside of you. Every
Yes.
answer, every aspect of life,
Hmm.
just ask your heart, ask your soul. The answer lies within. And
Yes.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Meg. I really
Yes,
appreciate
you're
our chat
welcome.
today. I have learned so much. I'm
Ditto.
excited to go and review some of this more. Really appreciate you and your book. I'm going to go and download it. I hope everybody else does too. We will put links in the chat. We will put links in the episode data for you. Please go and source out Meg and follow her on socials. And thank you again. I'm so blessed that we connected, and love your vibration. I really love the essence
Oh,
of how similar we are in many ways, and I look forward to seeing more of what you can do. Please like and
thank
subscribe
you.
for our episode, and if you have any questions, let us know, and I'll put you in touch with Meg as soon as I can. Have a great day, everyone.